Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We publish new videos every day. Don't forget, grab your smartphone and download the Lava Matra app and stay in touch. Guru Maharaj's message is your advantage. The following is a reading from the new Sri Krishna Caitanya Book by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj on August 8th, 2019 in Sri Dhama Mayapur, India.
Chalam Prangalangayathayam Yathivata Mahanmane Sri Gurum Nirajanam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Israel Hari Om Tat Sat. So today we're continuing with the Caitanya Book on the Lord Nityananda's Vyasa Puja, Harivas Kirtan.
শ্রীবাস বচনে মহাপ্রভু ও ভক্তগণের প্রীতি। প্রীত হইলা মহাপ্রভু শ্রীবাসের বলে, হরি হরি ধ্বনি করে বৈষ্ণব সকলে।
Mahaprabhu Chaitanya was greatly pleased to hear Srivas Thakur's words. All the assembled Vaishnavas chanted, Hari Hari, Hari Hari, Hari Hari.
গণ সহ মহাপ্রভুর শ্রীবাস গৃহে গমন। বিশ্বম্ভর বলে, শুন শ্রীপাদ গোসাই, শুভ কর সবে পণ্ডিতের ঘর যায়।
Vishwambar said, listen, Sripad Gosai, with your blessings, we'll all go to the Srivas Pandit's house.
আনন্দিত নিত্যানন্দ প্রভুর বচনে, সেই ক্ষণে আজ্ঞা লই করিলা গমনে।
Lord Nityananda was very blissful to hear the Lord's words. At that time, they gave the Lord's instruction. They all immediately departed.
সর্বগণে চলিলা ঠাকুর বিশ্বম্ভর, রামকৃষ্ণ বেরি যেন গোকুল কিঙ্কর।
All the associates went with Vishwambar and Nityananda, just like the associates and Gokul would surround Krishna and Balaram.
প্রবিষ্ট হইলা মাত্র শ্রীবাস মন্দিরে, বড় কৃষ্ণ আনন্দ হইল সবার শরীরে।
As soon as they entered the house of Srivas Thakur, they felt great ecstasy and devotion and ecstatic love for Lord Krishna. Their body was filled with ecstatic symptoms of love for Lord Krishna.
আপ্তগণ ব্যতীত অন্যের প্রবেশ রোধারত আজ্ঞায় দ্বার রোধ। কপাট পড়িল তবে প্রভুর আজ্ঞায়, আপ্তগণ বিনা আর যাইতে না পায়।
The main door was closed on the order of the Lord Chaitanya. So that, except for the intimate associates, no one could enter into that house. So all the functions of Lord Chaitanya would start with kirtan. So the door was closed so that those who were ineligible to participate in the kirtan would not come, would not enter.
ব্যাস পূজায় অধিবাস কীর্তন আনন্দ কীর্তন করিতে আজ্ঞা করিলা ঠাকুর উঠিল কীর্তন ধ্বনি বাহ্য গেল দূর
Lord Chaitanya gave the order to start the kirtan. And as the sound of the kirtan arose, everyone lost their external consciousness. So prior to the Vyas Puja, only Lord Chaitanya's intimate associates were allowed to enter, and they all did kirtan. So as they loudly began to chant, they lost their external consciousness, external perception, and were absorbed in spiritual ecstasy.
ব্যাস পূজা অধিবাস উল্লাস কীর্তন দুই প্রভু নাচে বেরি গায়ে ভক্তগণ
So before the Vyas Puja, the Adivas Kirtan was performed with great joy. The two lords danced, and all the devotees were surrounding them. They sang. So anticipating the Vyas Puja ceremony, all the devotees were very jubilant. Sri Gaur and Nityananda were dancing in the kirtan. The devotees surrounded the lords and expressed their jubilation through their performance of kirtan.
চির দিবসের প্রেমে চৈতন্য নিতাই দোহে দোহা ধ্যান করি নাচে এক ঠাঁই
So Chaitanya and Nitai are bound by spiritual love. They meditated on each other as they danced together. In the spiritual world, everything is done on a level of love. In this material world, the tendency is to do things as a business deal. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. But in the spiritual world, it's done with love. I want to scratch your back, you want to scratch mine. It looks like the same thing, but it's completely different consciousness. So, Nitai and Gaur, they're bound together with love, and they madly danced in spiritual ecstasy. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, he meditates on his devotee, and his devotee meditates on the Lord. So the word dhyana is used. That doesn't refer to materialistic thoughts of enjoying the material world. It's filled with meditation on the spiritual ecstasies, spiritual appreciation and love for each other. It's devoid of gross materialistic thoughts. It's full of spiritual pleasure. So, there's a nice description how we see some gross material object of pleasure, and then from that a subtle image arrives. But the spiritual bliss, the happiness that enters in, is devoid of these subtle and gross material sense pleasures. It's due to spiritual happiness, and that is something that descends from the spiritual world. As one of the acharyas is saying, Alokya Premadana Harinama Sankirtana, the love of Alok Vrindavan has come down as the Harinam Sankirtan. Who wants spiritual bliss? Thank you.
হুঙ্কার করহে কেহ কেহ বা গর্জন কেহ বা মূর্ছা যায় কেহ করয়ে ক্রন্দন.
Someone roared loudly. Someone cried out. Someone fell unconscious to the ground. And someone else wept in spiritual bliss. You shouldn't have this spiritual ecstasy while you're fine. You have to control yourself. So when spiritual consciousness awakens in the heart of the conditioned soul, the symptoms of ecstatic love manifest in the body. He then loses his worldly conception of life and manifests symptoms of spiritual ecstasy. Ecstasy. Variegated spiritual pleasure. Our Lord Chaitanya, in order to express this, he is the Lord of the 14 worlds, and he is beyond material conception. But he danced with his associates so that everyone could experience a transcendental bliss, a spiritual pleasure, chanting the holy names. So to think that this material happiness is something like material happiness is totally unreasonable. The pastimes of Rajendra Kumar Krishna or the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are all on the transcendental platform. It removes the darkness of ignorance from the consciousness of the conditioned souls. So when the conditioned soul is just on the level of sadhana bhakti, they cannot understand the glorious transcendental nature of the Lord's pastimes.
চৈতন্য ভাগবত মধ্যখণ্ড. কম্পসের পুলক অশ্রু আনন্দ মূর্ছা যত ঈশ্বরের বিকার কহিতে জানি কত.
So I'm unable to fully describe the Lord's transcendental transformations of love, such as quivering, shivering, hair standing on end, falling unconscious and spiritual bliss. Beyond my ability to explain all the different symptoms.
সা অনুভাবানন্দে নাচে প্রভু দুইজন ক্ষণে কোলাকুলি করে করয়ে ক্রন্দন
Swa Anubhava Ananda. By their own ecstasy, the two danced. They sometimes embraced each other and cried in bliss.
দোহার চরণ দোহে ধরিবারে চায় পরম চতুর দোহে কেহ নাই পায়
Each tried to catch the lotus feet of the other. However, they both were so cleverly dancing that they avoided being caught. In the ordinary dealings, if someone touches another's feet, the person whose feet are touched becomes very proud and thinks himself very great. But since such materialistic false ego is not found in transcendental dealings, and Vaishnavas or Vishnu, they never hesitate to touch each other's lotus feet. The transcendental activities of Vaishnavas are simply not subject matters understandable by ordinary proud persons.
পরম আনন্দে দোহে কেহ গড়াগড়ি যায় আপন না জানে দোহে আপন লীলায়
Did someone to repeat what I say? Who needs repetition? You need repetition. Necesita repetition. Transcendental supreme bliss. The two were rolling on the ground. They forgot themselves as they were absorbed in their own pastimes.
বাহ্য দূর হইল বসন নাহি রয় ধরয়ে বৈষ্ণবগণ ধরন না যায়
External consciousness went far away, and their cloth became scattered. Vaishnavas tried to pacify them, hold them, but they were unable to hold them.
যে ধরয়ে ত্রিভুবন কে ধরিব তারে মহামত্ত দুই প্রভু কীর্তনে বিহরে
Those that can hold the three worlds, who can hold them? And the two lords became intoxicated and spiritual bliss and the happiness of kirtan, who can understand, who can control them. So both the Lord and the Thai are sustainers of the whole world. How can a creative living entity of this world possibly hold the Lord?
বলো বলো বলি ডাকে শ্রী গৌর সুন্দর সিঞ্চিত আনন্দ জলে সর্বকলে বর
As the Lord Gaurasunda called out, chant, chant, his entire body became soaked with tears of ecstasy. With tears of ecstasy. Ananda Jale Sarva Kalivar. His entire body became soaked.
চিরদিনে নিত্যানন্দ পাই অভিলাষে বাহ্য নাহি আনন্দ সাগর মাঝে ভাসে
After obtaining a long cherished fulfillment, to give the association of Lord Nityananda, he did not have external consciousness. He forgot himself. He was floating in the ocean of bliss. The threefold miseries are present within the material world. In the kingdom of spiritual variegatedness, however, there is no ever fresh outburst of spiritual happiness.
বিশ্বম্ভর নৃত্য করে অতি মনোহর নিজ শির লাগে গিয়া চরণ উপর
Vishwambar's dancing was most charming and beautiful because his feet would also touch his own head sometimes.
টলমল ভূমি নিত্যানন্দ পদতলে ভূমিকম্প হেন মানে বৈষ্ণব সকলে
The earth trembled on the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. The devotees, the Vaishnavas, thought that there was an earthquake.
এই মতো আনন্দে নাচেন দুই নাথ সে উল্লাস কহিবারে শক্তি আছে কার
In this way, the two lords danced in ecstasy. Who has the ability, power to describe the transcendental bliss of these two? That ends the chapter, Happiness during the Aspuja Adivas Kirtan. Hariva. Hariva. Ananda Sivanai. Ananda Sivanai. Ananda Sivanai. Nirananda Doridai. Nirananda Doridai. Nirananda Doridai. No limit to the spiritual happiness. No limit to the spiritual bliss. And the unhappiness goes far away. So we see that this ecstatic symptom was realized by Lord Gaura and Nitai. Haribol. Gauranga, Nityananda, Gauranga, Nityananda. 4 minutes of questions.
4 minutes of questions. In Tulsi prayers, we sing that those who take her shelter, their desires are fulfilled. In the prayer, we also ask her, make us followers of the gopis in Vraja. So, question first, what type of practical services can we do to please Tulsi Maharani and get her shelter?
Tulsi Maharani, we can bow down and prostrate obeisances. We can water her. We can perform arti to her. We can circumvent, we can chant kirtan to her. We can chant japa to her. And we can circumambulate her. What more do you want? And you can offer her leaves and flowers to the lotus feet of the Lord.
By doing such services and getting her shelter, can one eventually come to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti by her mercy? From Prem Gaur Sundar Das.
Why not? Krishna Chaitanya thought that.
Why is Kirtan more important than Shravan? Jagat Palika Radharani Devidasi.
Shravan and Kirtan come together. Shravan and Kirtan come together. We chant Kirtan and we hear the Kirtan. Kirtan and Shravan. We hear someone else chants. We chant, someone else hears. So it comes together. If you chant and don't hear, that's not good. So, in the 9 processes of devotional service, first is Shravana, second is Kirtana. You have to hear the chanting, and you have to chant, and someone else hears. So the two are together. All right? Well, thank you very much.
Do you like our ad-free videos? Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We publish new videos every day, and don't forget to like and share our channel.